Welcome to Leadership Matters, a podcast from the Bailey Group. I'm your host, Kaylee Thompson, president of and partner at the Bailey Group, where we believe better leaders create healthier workplace environments, healthier humans, and a better world. On this show, we explore real stories, practical insights, and honest conversations to help you lead yourself and others better. Thanks for joining us. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Leadership Matters. I'm your host, Kaylee Thompson, and today we've got Roshini Rajkumar with us. Roshini, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
It's great to have you here. So, Roshini, when people ask you what you do, how do you answer that question?
Well, it's simple for me. It might be confusing for some, but I am a crisis strategist and C-suite advisor, and I also have a show, a podcast called The Crisis Files. I'm the executive producer and host. So the worlds of executive leadership, crisis, media relations, because in my past life I was a television news reporter, the law, I'm a licensed attorney, all of them really blend in the work I do in crisis strategy. But when I'm coaching executives, certainly I'm preparing them for any possible crisis, but we're also talking about human capital management, business growth, all those leadership and executive presence, executive mindset topics that you think about.
That's great. What were some of the formative experiences that you've had that shape how you see the world today and how you show up with clients and help them through some of these trickier situations?
Well, so much of what's formed me as the professional now is really baked into my previous career, which was a television news reporter and host. So I did that for about a decade, and having to think on your feet, you spend a day 8 to 14 hours some days putting together interviews, shooting video with your photojournalist, and then writing it into a script of a much shorter duration, sometimes a minute, sometimes a minute 30, sometimes 2 minutes. So you really have to collapse a lot of content into such a short duration for TV. And certainly there are times that you have longer coverage going on or live chats back and forth that last longer. But the art of colorful language and editing well and being efficient in the moment so that your final product could be polished yet powerful and concise was definitely built into my life, and I grew those skills as a TV news reporter.
Wow.
So that set of skills really plays out in my current work with executives, other leaders, in that I've been there. I've been in the hot seat in a lot of different situations. Sometimes they have to get on a stage or present some hard information to their board or do a media interview themselves. So all of those things behind the scenes as their secret weapon. I've lived some of that world already. And certainly I haven't been a CEO of 5 companies, but even in my life now, 20 years as the CEO of my own business, I understand a lot of those business issues myself. But that past life in TV news, as well as my foundation as a licensed attorney, where I'm thinking about liability and exposure and optics all the time. So that blend really makes my background very unique, even in the current work I do.
Fascinating. How have you seen the world? Crisis strategy is such an interesting arena for me. How have you seen the world evolve through your time, dealing in these high pressure, high stakes environments?
Well, if we go back to the mid to late 90s, the late 90s, when I was starting as an on-air television reporter, to now, I mean, so much has changed partly in big ways by social media. So the very platforms that we're talking about now have changed, just like now TikTok is in and Facebook is, 50-50 depending on your age bracket. Remember MySpace, which was a while back, and then it's totally out. Well, none of those platforms existed for most of the duration of my television news career. So the world has changed on that front. And in leading and coaching clients to take advantage as well as manage the tools that are out there now, so much of that has changed. Also, the idea of a personal brand and this whole influencer movement, That has been game changing, sometimes for the good, sometimes not,
Sure.
in our modern landscape.
Yeah. Wow. Now, as we sit here today in January of 2026, there's a lot of crisis going on right now. And I'd be curious, given your experience and your expertise and your background, how do you kind of sit in the current state of the world, the state of Minnesota, and think about what there is to be focused on, to learn from this time?
Well, there is so much going on, not only in Minnesota and Minneapolis, but all over the country. Unfortunately, Minneapolis is once again on definitely a national stage with the crises that are happening, whether it's the fraud situation that's happening, that has been uncovered, many people charged and convicted, other people being investigated, including some of our office holders being investigated. That's one. Then we have everything that's going on the immigration front and ICE officers being in the Twin Cities. I look at these situations as I really try to with everything crisis through the lens of the law. And it's hard for many people to take the human element out. But how I'm able to look at these things, and I'm certainly not saying I'm doing this in some kind of perfect way, but because of that background in TV news for a decade, where I was a reporter for a decade, and then I went on, even when I started my business, had a radio show of my own for 9 years. I have a podcast now. So I'm constantly in the current events, analyzing them. But now as a talk show host, since I left TV news reporting, I share opinion. So I don't consider myself a reporter. But those days of my life as a reporter taught me, yes, you're human, but you have to not show your bias to the best extent as you can in how you cover, who you go to interview. So I learned about interviewing as many sides of stories as I could. One of the gaps we're seeing right now is the lines are blurred for sure, but I'm not sure that everyone is really looking at it from all sides of the issue and really gaining what are the facts. We're also living in a day and age in the United States where civics education is sorely missing. I remember government class in 5th grade, in 8th grade, AP government in high school. And then I was a poli-sci major as one of my majors in college. So the Constitution and civics have been they're as close to being part of my DNA as possible. So I'm always going to look at that Constitution and what does the Constitution afford all of us? Certainly when we look at some of the video that's out there about some of these officers, it does appear that they might be skirting the Constitution. But we also can't assume all of them are, because we're not there. We're not there from the moment any crime happened, someone's possibly an illegal immigrant, paperwork was filed, and then the ICE officers were charged with bringing that person in. We are not there at every stage of that. And I say that totally respectful of human rights. Nobody's human rights and dignity should be violated. But we also have to remember there is a Constitution. And if someone is living in the United States illegally and they know they are, and they haven't filed for refugee status or some other legal means of why they should still be here, they've got to know that they're living on borrowed time. And Kaylee, I say this as an immigrant myself. I came to the United States as a 22-month toddler. My parents, who are both passed, I have to assume they did all the paperwork, but we were sworn in 1980 as citizens. I don't even remember it, but my parents were there to shepherd that whole process. So I'm not saying I want to be pulled over and asked for my passport or my license, but in my heart and on paper, I know I'm legal. And I'm not trying to be controversial by saying that, but we have to really look at what are we doing as a country to keep the laws that are on the books, that passed legislatures across states in our federal government made the law of the land or the law of a state, and those things need to be followed. And the moment we all say we don't need to follow laws anymore, we're kind of screwed. I mean, it's that simple to me. It's about the law. And then you have humans that are applying the law, which is fine. That's where we have grace and patience and actual analysis of or interpretation of. We should, all of us, want a solid judiciary that is interpreting those statutes, case law, and the Constitution. The problem is now everyone has a camera or everyone thinks they're a lawyer. Everyone thinks they're a TV journalist or a podcaster or a freelance journalist or a lawyer. So I'm not even sensitive to it, but I happen to be connected to both of those worlds. Everyone doesn't think they're a surgeon, right? If you tell me I've got to get my eye operated on, my husband's not going to be in the operating room watching to tell the surgeon what to do, because we are trusting that surgeon is educated, following the rules that he or she learned, and operating on my eye, okay? So I just want kind of people to think about that for a moment. The rise of social media, the rise of phone cams, the rise of trials on television have kind of made everyone think they're an attorney. Mm. You're not, and you're not a judge either, unless you actually are.
You said it's such an interesting intersection here, Roshini, given your licensed attorney status, your immigrant status, your media experience, and then also this executive coaching, C-suite advising angle as well. And then you throw the crisis strategy experience into all of it. I'm curious, as you know, we've worked with clients who are really grappling with the challenges that have arisen as a result of what's going on in Minnesota, and a lot of fear and anxiety and can I go to work or not go to work? Should I go to work? Should I not go to work? Funding cuts, things like that. How do you walk alongside clients as they're navigating just all of these different challenges?
Well, the first rule of crisis prevention as well as reaction and management is to stay calm. Mm. And if you stay calm, you're in a better place. That is easier said than done, I realize. We also have to really make sure we gather all the facts as pertain to our company and our employees. Mm. So if, let's say you employ 50 people and you are 100% sure all of them have the right paperwork, are either U.S. citizens or legal immigrants or legally here, you should have nothing to worry about. It's sad that people are worried. It is, and I feel that. And I haven't heard that with my clients, partly because of the nature of who some of them are. But also, if I did, because we have also had different things happening where I've coached CEOs ahead of town halls or other meetings in saying the appropriate things so that they don't look like they're ignoring it by not saying something. But if you know who your audience is, mm-hmm. I'm big on audience analysis. Mm. Who's in that room with you? Who's going to read that media release you're putting out? Who's going to look at that social post, video, or writing that you've put out? If you know your audience, customize your message to hit the audiences you need. Mm. And sometimes your audience is everybody. Then you have to ask yourself, do I need my audience to be everybody? Do I need to have a message on every one of our social posts about every issue? Mm. Probably not. So it's really important to understand your internal and external stakeholders. For a lot of people, an external stakeholder is the media, but depending on the size of your company, it's not. Media doesn't care about you. Mm. Certainly if you're a Fortune 500 company or you're very vivid and out there, you've got a high persona for whatever reason, either as a leader or as a brand, then there are different sort of measurements or metrics that you put some of these conversations through, but you do that with your executive team. You do that with your board, and then you definitely communicate out to all of your stakeholders, and one big group are your employees. So you really want employees to feel like leadership is telling you what their stance is, being transparent and truthful. And also, if leadership or the brand decides not to comment on a specific social issue, let's say, tell them why. Tell them why. What is that reason? Could it be, it's not just about profit, but if you're employing 50 or more people, that's all of those families' livelihoods on the line. And so what the CEO says does matter. Could it affect the income of all of those employees? So these are some calculi that I'm constantly thinking of for my own business, for my clients. They're for sure thinking about it. I recently saw some headlines about people wondering, where are the CEOs? Where's the leadership? Calling things out. Well, there is no way that every company in Minnesota or every company in the United States could have the same messaging on any given event. There's just no way, because you have different audiences. So you've got to be true to your brand. What's your brand identity? My favorite example, sadly, to bash, but they've overcome it for the most part, is Budweiser. A couple years ago, they used an influencer in a campaign. It didn't work. That influencer wasn't really someone who was necessarily a focal point for Budweiser's audiences. So that was a fail on Budweiser's part. Could they have handled, and they are not a client, never have been, maybe one day they will be, but they could have handled the reaction better. And what they've done, and as I've seen over the time since that debacle, was really go back to who their core audience is. And if someone has a problem with that, drink a different beer or don't drink beer. Sometimes in the marketplace, it's that simple. And I say that totally not trying to be callous. So I think the expectation that all of these companies should be making comments, what I would love is that every family, every individual, check in with their own family and make sure, how are you doing? How's your mental health? Do we need to go for a family walk? Obviously not in today's weather in Minneapolis, but go to the gym, go to a movie together. Do something that brings wellness to you individually, you and your family, or your friend group, whomever is important in your life. And then when you are able to then go to a work setting with some calm individually, then everybody as a group in a work setting, leadership, employees, board members, whomever, can then more calmly make some decisions.
I heard a lot of intentionality in that.
So much intentionality. And so when I saw this particular post on LinkedIn this morning before I came here, Kaylee, I'm not going to message that person, but I thought it was pretty harsh to call out, where's the leadership? Where are all these? Well, they're hopefully taking care of their own employees and getting their own houses in order before they go on a social digital platform and bash out at someone or something or the feds or this person or that person before we have all the facts, before they have all the facts. So I applaud the brands, the leaders that look, how's my team doing? Let's make sure I'm listening to my team before I worry about posting.
Yeah. And I also heard a commitment to the mission of the organization. What is the difference we seek to have in the world, and how do we stay true to that and know our audience really well and tailor the messaging to that?
Yeah, tailoring the message to who your audience is. So you can have your intent. I always say it's your intent, but who's that audience? And you might have multiple audiences, so it might not be a one-size-fits-all message. You probably need multiple messages done through different media forms. When I say media, not necessarily the public traditional media, but maybe there's a group that you're emailing a specified email. Maybe there's a group you're making one-on-one calls to 10 different people. Maybe that's your board. You need to do that. You can have a confidential conversation. And maybe there is a reason to have a social post on your digital platforms or an announcement on your website. For some brands, all of those things apply. For some, maybe only one. And for some, none of those apply. So it's figuring out who are your audiences, how do they need to be communicated with in order for them to hear you and understand your message.
So good.
Thank you. Well, I know that some people have knee-jerk reactions to things. That never, ever is, I would say, in like 0.00001% of the time, is that the way to go? Yeah. Otherwise, we have to remain calm and figure out what's authentic to our brand and what's authentic to me or us as leaders.
Yes, that's really good. So, Roshini, as you look at 2026 and beyond, I know you're a future caster for your clients. What are some of the biggest challenges you see on the horizon?
Talent is a really big topic and will continue to be. Now, some employees are worried about their jobs, but as leaders, we should be concerned that we have a culture that makes them want to stay if we have the space for them. Sometimes the numbers just don't work and you don't have the space. Then I really hope leaders are being very humane in how they exit with employees. But being able to have talent that's loyal, that really appreciates the culture and is challenged so that they keep staying interested, wanting to be productive. So what are the things you have in place that are talent focused? It doesn't mean just like 3 meals a day in our cafeteria or how much vacation time. It's how are we really taking care of our people so that our people are challenged, interested, and want to take care of our brand. And that is number one. And I do believe that will supersede any of the scaries that are happening for a lot right now with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, at least in my lifetime, and I think I will be gone before it's completely taking over humankind, but it has the capability to do so many great things. It still needs the human minds to foster those things, to develop them, and to put them toward good and productive outcomes.
So I love your point about investing in the culture and the environment. I kind of think of it as keep your best employees sticky. You want to keep them there and engaged. And I love how you talked about, the right level of challenge, because we know that that's an important piece of high levels of engagement in employees. What are some of the ways, and I know it's highly dependent on the mission of the brand and the values of the organization, but what are some of the most impactful ways that you've seen organizations be really intentional about cultivating that high engagement culture internally?
Well, many organizations have employee surveys, but you have to go beyond the survey, just collecting the data just to check that box. We did that survey twice a year, once a year. It's really digging in and being open to hearing from the employees if they have comments. So put those comments in there. Make sure someone's getting back to them about those comments, those kinds of things. I do have one example of a leader I've coached, and one of the things I loved about what he did in a major announcement that happened as he conducted a town hall that I prepped him for, but he made available his cell number, made the call to action to email, text him if you have any questions about what I've just shared with you. And he got hundreds of replies.
Wow.
And he made sure that he or one of his senior leaders got back to every single one. And I think that's great. It's time consuming, but it's great. And it was absolutely pivotal at the time and the space that brand was in that moment, that they heard from the leader like that.
What made that so pivotal?
Well, this particular brand had been through kind of a revolving door of leadership. So it was really important that they didn't feel like they were just being served a bill of goods in whatever content he did present that day, but that final touch of the reach out to me. And I'm guessing if I were any of those employees, if they actually heard back from him, they were probably just so happy and pleasantly surprised, maybe many of them, but also happy. And think about that, how right out of that particular very pivotal moment for that brand, all of a sudden you have your employees, who every one of your employees is a brand ambassador. Are they a good brand ambassador? Are they an apathetic brand ambassador? Are they a negative brand ambassador in that they're saying, writing, talking negatively about your brand? That doesn't help either. And that's such a good just microcosm, that example of why it's so important to take care of your people.
And it goes back to your point about knowing your audience And what I heard in that story is also knowing the environment that the audience is in. And given the circumstances of that situation and lots of turnover at the top, just being able to do something different that met them where they were at.
Exactly. And it brought a lot of joy to him. He shared some of those comments with me and questions, and I was really proud of him. It wasn't a gamble. I mean, but it can be risky to do something like that. Because if you say you're going to hear back, you got to get back to them.
Yeah. So if I'm a listener right now and I'm thinking about growing, developing, navigating the complexity of being a leader in 2026, what parting words of wisdom would you leave me with today?
It's really important to be honest with yourself about what you want. Be very clear about who you are, what you can do, and also what you won't do, and who's along for the ride. Who's your family, your friends, your support system, but also who are those sponsors, if we're talking work, who are those sponsors that are singing your praises, fighting for you when you're not in the room? Have you earned enough of those in your current workplace? Why or why not? If you can say yes or no to that question.
And what makes that so important?
Well, because if you're in a brand, I mean, I'm mainly working with Fortune 500 companies, so I'm thinking about that path to executive C-suite leadership possibly in the people I work with, but this can apply to any size company. If you do get a promotion, you don't want naysayers. You want people to be like, yay, Kaylee totally deserved that. She was this, she was that. She did all these things. Whether they saw you do it or they heard about it through your mentors and sponsors. But if you get that promotion and someone, maybe they're going to be jealous. You can't control that. But if they think, wow, she didn't really deserve that, or she's doing this or that, why is that happening? So you got to control to the extent that you can, or at least be mindful of. That's probably a better way to say that. Be mindful of who your advocates are, where are some spaces you can grow relationships. So I call it managing up, down, and across. And a lot of times people are managing up to their boss, whether the boss is the board, the boss is the CEO, and then down to their teams. So whatever level you are, there's an up, down, and across in your life. What I've found in doing this work for 20 years is that 95% of my clients, when I ask, how's your across, meaning those peers within, that could also be other direct reports of your boss or just similarly situated around the organization. And 95% of them say, well, that's probably the area that lacks the most. So the more you can do on those across relationships, because one day that across could be your boss or your employee, or it could be your best friend, could be your spouse, whatever. Manage the across, and you're going to build some amazing relationships and partnerships. And I'm talking, if possible, if you're geographically situated, go to lunch, grab a coffee, go for a walk, do a virtual happy hour or coffee if you're not geographically in the same place. There are so many ways. Invite someone to an event you're having at your house that has nothing to do with work, or out and about, whatever it is. So that's a real big area. And I've seen just across pretty much every one of my clients, when they focus on the across, magic happens.
So good. Roshini, thank you so much for being with us today.
You are welcome. Great to be with you.
It was good to see you again and be in conversation with one another.
Thank you.
And thanks to our listeners. Join us next week on Leadership Matters.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Leadership Matters. If today's episode resonated with you, would you do me a favor and share it with someone you care about? To learn more about the work the Bailey Group is doing in the world, check us out at thebaileygroup.com or follow us over on LinkedIn. We love sharing useful articles, helpful resources, and valuable tools to help you expand your leadership capacity. Like and subscribe, and join us next time for more honest conversations.